So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this Jumbotron back into my container. Get rid of that H2 there. Now what I'm doing is I'm nesting my HTML tags by using the tab key. This is not necessary, but it helps to explain to someone who is not you how things are inside of other things. So we can see that this H1 and this H3 are inside of this div because they're kind of nested under them. Spike, shush. It's my dog. Relax. He likes to bark at the air. Alright, next up we have this Jumbotron is inside of this container, or this div is inside of this div. Now the fact that we tabbed them or indented them doesn't make them inside. It's literally the fact that you have an opening div here and then its closing div is here. Now there's nothing that ties this closing div to that. Like if I get rid of this closing div, it will still kind of work a little bit. But if I get rid of this closing div, it's going to break and it's going to think that this div here, which is the next thing, is this closing div right there. So it's kind of like a light switch, right? We turn this light switch on, or I don't know if you've ever seen a light switch with like, multiple light switches on it. Like you control like 4 different switches. And so like you flip this switch, those lights are on, and then you flip this switch and those lights are on, and then this light's on, and then this light's off. This light's on, this other light's on, and then this other light's off. And then this light that we turn on up here, now it's off. And then this light up here that we turn off is off down here. And that's how your browser interprets that HTML string. It looks at it character by character, and it remembers what's opened and what's not and what's closed. And when it gets closed, it closes the most recent thing that's associated with that tag. So this is the most recent. So this div, this closing div, will close the most recent open div, which is that one up there. Okay, blah, blah, blah. That's great. Okay, let's move on now. So what I want to do is I want to, in a container underneath this, I'm going to make a new container, and I'm just going to hit a return there to separate it. Doesn't need it. And I can type div period container and then tab, and it will automatically give that a class name, which is kind of handy. And I'm going to add a row to this, so I'm going to div.row tab. All right. And now within that row, I'm going to make 3 columns. 3 columns. So I'm going to make another div, and this is going to have a class of column, C-O-L, col dash sm, and this one's going to be 3. Cool. Tab key. And inside of that column, I'm going to do a paragraph tag with some lore. All right, this is where things can get kind of like confusing, because when this text wraps, it's kind of hard to see. Like it just gets confusing because the text doesn't honor the indent. So what I like to do is, in my HTML document, if I hit the enter key right there, see how it breaks this line and it honors the indent? The fact that I've hit the enter key, that's not going to affect the layout of that text one bit. All it's going to do is when the browser starts reading that text, it's just going to put it all together as one paragraph, as you can see down here. It doesn't honor those returns. So those returns in text in HTML don't mean anything. You can't do line breaks by just making a return with your enter key in the HTML. Okay, so this whole part right here, hello, oh bar. If I have to leave to barf, please forgive me. So this div is a column, and this whole thing is that column. Here's the opening div, and here's the closing div. And so if I want to make another column, I have to go after that closing div and make a new column. And we'll talk about what the SM part of that means. There's actually 4 designations in Bootstrap. Cool. And I'm going to do P lorem tab. And again, I'm going to manually break these lines so it looks a little more organized. Now I have 2 columns. All right, again, this is the beginning of this column and then the close of that column. And I'm going to make a new div, column, SM. What number am I going to use now? So I've done, because I wanted this to be a 3-column layout, right? So remember, our columns always have to add up to 12. So this is 3 here, 3 here, 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 minus 12 is 6, right? So I'm going to do a 6 there. Boop. And then again, another paragraph with lorem, manual line breaks. Booyah. All right, now I have trace columns. Cool. Now on this middle column, this one right here, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put an image in there instead of paragraph. So I'm going to get rid of this paragraph, and I am going to open up the find, what is it called, the kitty one. What was that called? Place kitten, right? So I'm going to go to placekitten.com, and I'm just going to copy this one right here. Control C. I'm going to go back over to this, and I'm going to type image, tab, and then place that kitten in there. Cool. Now we have this giant space, so I want this kitten to fill up that space, so I can increase that first number, which is the width designation, but it kind of flows into that next one, right? Okay, well, let's do this. Let's do maybe 280. Closer. Let's do 270. Okay, it's not terrible, and that's an adorable kitty. Okay, the only problem though is that when I change the size of my browser, I get this overlap here because that kitten image is set at that size. It's not going to change. But what I can do is I can add a class to this image. So after the source right here, and in Bootstrap 4 it's called img-fluid. And what it will do is it will make that kitten image take up the full width of that space. And in fact, I'm going to go back to 300 just so we can see it in action. Now the balance is way better here, and if I squeeze it down, you can see it honors that, and in fact it even changes the size of the kitten, which is super cool. Alright, nice. Alright, next up is going to be the nested rows, so let's pause here.